right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kara Folk, and I am a Director of Regional Programming with the University of Maryland Alumni Association. We're excited that you're able to join us for today's program, Loving Your Life and Living Into It. It is part of the Alumni Association's virtual program series, which we hope will provide thought-provoking and valuable content that will help alumni like you achieve your personal and professional goals. Please keep a close eye on our upcoming virtual programs as we look to provide relevant content during this time to continue to help you be successful at work and at home. Our very special guest today is author, psychological counselor, and national speaker, Joy Carroll. She has written and published 8 books, including Towers of Hope, Finding Courage, Journeys of Courage, The Fabric of Friendship, Seasons of Joy, and her latest 2020 publication, 9 Lives of Joy. Joy's personal story is an amazing and winding tale of finding hope after being diagnosed with a rare and usually fatal syndrome. Joy has used this story to continue to inspire others and keep the focus on living into our lives, even when the road seems impossible and challenges are presented at every turn. Joy is a proud 1968 graduate of the University of Maryland and was named the Outstanding Young Educator in the USA in 1966. Because of that honor, she received a full scholarship to the University of Maryland, where she earned her Master's of Education in Counseling Psychology. We're so excited to have you here today with us, Joy. How are you?
I am terrific and glad to be here at the University of Maryland. I miss that place. It's been a little while since I've been there, and I'm hoping that, because now that I live in Florida, that it won't be too long before the virus gets under control and I can come and pay a personal visit again back to my wonderful university that has given me so much.
Well, we hope you can too. It definitely, has the virus has put a clamp on a few things. So we hope we can see you again soon in person. So just give us a little background about your story. I know it's a winding one.
It is a winding one, and it's a story that even I love. I am so grateful to be alive. I shouldn't be alive according to statistics, but I don't want to start with that part. I want to start with the fact that I'm from Nebraska originally, was born and raised on a farm, which I loved, and have lived all over the world, spent 35 years of my life doing international development work. This was after my degree from the University of Maryland, which I will talk about a little bit later, about how the university really helped me in some of my international work. I mean, that sounds funny to say, but it really did. A degree in education and psychology is just one of the most valuable degrees I think anyone can have. And of course, I've spent time doing education and being a teacher. As you said, I was the outstanding educator first in the town of Boulder, Colorado. And I was nominated by parents, teachers, and my students. And then I was the outstanding educator of Colorado, and eventually went to the National Outstanding Young Educator contest and won that. And that's what gave me the wonderful scholarship that allowed me to come to the University of Maryland, full paid, books, everything. And what a gift to have. So that's kind of just a quick sketch from beginning to end. There's no end in sight because I'm living so well and so productively and happily that I don't have an end in sight at this point.
Well, thank you. No, I don't see one in sight either. So your latest book is called 9 Lives of Joy. Without spoiling the book, what are a few of the 9 lives that you're referencing in the book?
Well, actually, it sounds like it's about I had 8 very close encounters with death. But the book, as the woman who helped to work on it with me a bit said, she kept reading it, looking for where's the death part. It's all about 9 lives of joy. So I'm in my 9th life. And so it is not about death and dying, although it comes up in every chapter. At the end of every chapter, I say, I almost died, but I didn't. I'm still here, and I continue to be. I'd like to give you just maybe a little touch, a taste of a couple of chapters. Obviously, I am now a person who is called disabled, even though I am fully active and living fully in my life. That doesn't mean that when you get disabled, it isn't depressing and sad and despairing and painful. But I think it's the 7th chapter is when I came down with something called paraneoplastic syndrome, which really means that I had some undiagnosed cancer and my own antibodies were attacking the cancer and went crazy and started attacking my central nervous system. So what happened is I lost the ability to walk. And initially, I couldn't move one foot in front of the other. And I was in and out of hospitals for almost a year and then had caregivers living with me in a nursing facility, all kinds of things. And now I am living independently. I drive a normal car, and I am so grateful that I have an extensive life full of activities. I continue to do work as a teacher, preacher, speaker, and I'm writing a lot. I just finished an article for the Ford Foundation, which is going to be published soon, and from my undergraduate Wesleyan, and University of Maryland has been so kind to ask me to not only be here today on this program, but is also printed up one of my blogs. So I'm very active in spite of this paraneoplastic syndrome. I am in Florida now because I moved here because this is where Mayo Clinic is located. And this Mayo Clinic happens to have one of the few people that really know plastic syndrome. He was a resident with him. He's one of the few people in the whole world who knows anything about this syndrome. And fortunately, I'm his patient. And as he has told me and others at Mayo, almost no one who has ever been diagnosed with this, and not many of us have, it's very, very difficult to diagnose, and it's very rare. Almost no one lives past 3 years. They haven't seen anyone, and I'm on my 8th year. Now, Mayo says it has a lot to do with the fact that I eat really carefully, I exercise, and I follow directions, and I have this attitude that I love life, and I want to live, and I want to be productive. And just because I'm disabled doesn't mean I'm not productive. So that kind of gives you a taste of chapter 8, I think, in the book. There's 9 chapters. And another one I just want to share, which is kind of fun, which is one of the early chapters of when I was a child living on that farm in Nebraska. My dad and I loved to read together, and there weren't many books around, but we had a moving library that came in a milk box to the bank in Claytonia, Nebraska, population 199, close to our farm. And one day in that moving library, we found a book about Babe Ruth, a Yankee baseball player, and the house that Babe Ruth built. And we read that, and I was sure that I was going to grow up to be a Yankee baseball player because my dad would pitch balls to me and I could hit those balls way over the hog pen on our farm in Nebraska. So I was sure I'd be a Yankee baseball player. And I told everybody that when they asked me, and they'd sort of pat me on the head and say, "Oh, isn't that sweet?" Until I happened to tell our neighbor down the road that I was going to be a Yankee baseball player when I grew up, and he went, "You can't be a Yankee baseball player. You're just a girl, and you'll be lucky if you find yourself a good man." Well, that just sort of burst my balloon. But one of the people that really believed in me and who I'm grateful for all my life, although he's no longer with me, is my dad. Because my dad said, "Don't pay attention to what people say. You are going to do something great with your life. And don't ever forget that. Do something great with your life." So that's a hint of another chapter.
Thank you. Great. Well, so kind of on that note, during COVID, I've been thinking a lot about resilience and adapting. Can you speak to the power of resilience and adapting?
It's critical and it's hard. And I'm going to be the first to admit that it really, everyone, this COVID virus has really put dampeners and problems on so many people. There's so many people who are depressed. There are people who are drinking too much now. There are people who are really terribly unhappy because they don't feel productive. They don't feel like they're doing something. And resiliency is something I wish everyone could have. I think part of being resilient for me was being born on a dirt poor farm in Nebraska, and we had to do with what we had. And then having parents who could flow with and go with the flow. My father told me when I asked him one day, Daddy, how did you survive the Depression, the Dust Bowl, the temperatures of 115, 120, the grasshoppers coming in and eating everything that was left? How did you survive? He said, well, everybody else was in as much trouble as we were. And so, you know, we still had love in our life. Your mother and I loved each other. We loved our children. We did the best we could. We helped the neighbors helped us. We became resilient people. And so we didn't become brittle and break. And to the day that my parents ended their life on this universe, they were the most resilient people I know. My mother passed away when she was 95, my dad at 97. And at 97, he was still digging up the weeds in the yard, driving the youngsters, the 80-year-olds and 70-year-olds. And he was 96, 97. And even as he approached death, he said to me, you know, Joy, this is kind of an adventure. I've never died before. He was the most resilient, flexible person. And I think that we need to stay flexible. We need to stop. As we get older, we sometimes get rigid. We think we know the answers. We don't know the answers. We don't know much of anything. Keep studying, keep getting more education, keep reading, keep opening your mind to new possibilities, because if you don't, you're going to be like frozen ice. And it takes a lot to thaw out when you get really frozen. So that's resiliency, I guess. And the other part, what did you ask me, Kara?
Oh, the power of resilience and adapting.
And adapting. Well, that goes right together. You know, you don't know what's going to be dealt to you. I didn't have a clue. I, who traveled all over the world for 35 years for Save the Children, Christian Children's Fund, Ford Foundation, United Nations, I was the healthiest person you could imagine. I just couldn't possibly be stopped. And one day I was really stopped dead in my tracks. And I had to use every ounce of my resiliency and my adaptability. If we can figure out that life isn't what we always expect it to be, and that we have to be able to adapt to new things that are going to come our way, we're surprised. We're often very surprised at what hits us. I never imagined I wouldn't still be living in my apartment in Manhattan, still doing international work, still traveling all over the world. I never imagined I wouldn't be able to walk without canes or rollator or something. And I do walk now. At first I couldn't walk one step. I walk with help, but I never imagined that. So I've had to adapt or go under and be depressed, despair, probably die. And in fact, my doctors at Mayo say, anybody who had had all the suffering and all the pain you've gone through and all the problems at this point in their life would probably be in a wheelchair and saying, I give up. Or even worse, in a hospital bed, or even worse, dead. Adapt. Keep trying new things. It's not going to be the same. And trust me, after the virus is over, not going to be the same world we knew even before. I know in my beloved New York City, almost everything's shut down. It's going to be real hard getting back to what we think is normal. So we've got to adapt.
I think it's good to remember during this time for sure.
Yeah.
personal question, did your parents stay in Nebraska for all of their lives?
No, they didn't. My mother had asthma pretty badly, and in Nebraska, there's a lot of molds and mildews and lots of dust. And she started getting asthma pretty badly, and so they moved to California. And of course, they're no longer with us at this point. But my dad adapted. He was no longer a farmer in California. He did all kinds of things. He became a post office worker and he was good at it. When he died at his funeral, there were over 200 people there. He hadn't been a postal carrier for, I don't know, 20 years or 30 years. I really am not even sure. And there were still people who he had carried mail for who came to his funeral. I mean, talk about adapting.
Right, yeah, you definitely had a role model in adapting.
Oh, I had a great role model.
Maybe two, yeah. So to switch gears a little bit, so to talk about University of Maryland, and how that played a role in your life before, during, after graduation, kind of a little overview of that.
Right. Well, I had moved to the Baltimore area after I'd won my award, and I was looking for where I would go to graduate school again, another graduate school, because I wanted to really study counseling, psychology, education, all put together, because I had been a teacher and loved teaching, and I still do. And so the University of Maryland stood out as one of those exceptional schools that had just about anything you needed. It really does. And while I was there, I was so thrilled with my professors. They were so, talk about adaptable and accessible, available to me. I mean, I needed to ask a lot of questions and they were there to answer them. And they encouraged me and they helped me to grow, whether it was in psychology or education or in statistics, which I thought I'd never like. They taught me how to do statistics, and I was shocked at that. But the part that I really want to focus on is that after I graduated, that degree became invaluable to me. I mean, there's just no other way to say it. I'll just tell a quick story. One of the things that I did after graduation, I've been a counselor in schools, I've been a psychologist here, done all kinds of things, but I started doing international work and loved it. And my degree from the University of Maryland really helped me so much. Excuse me. I went, initially, I was working for Save the Children, and we were always opening new programs in areas where there was a need. And one of the places that came up was Vietnam. That was after the war. It was maybe 10 years after the war was finished. And I asked Save the Children if I could see whether there was a way we could set up a program there. And everybody said, you'll never get into Vietnam. You'll never get the American government to approve of it, for number one, because it was considered trading with the enemy. There was no normalization between the countries of Vietnam and the United States. So for 3 years, I worked on that. And I can tell you how my professors helped me. They taught me how you learn to listen and you pay attention and you don't try to make a judgment. You wait and you be patient and you will figure out how to work something out. And it was tough going. Not the Vietnamese so much as the United States State Department. It took me years to convince them it was okay for us to start working in one of the poorest provinces in Vietnam that had been really hit hard by the war, by the American war. A lot of educational facilities had been destroyed, hospitals, not just roads and military bases. And so I negotiated both with Vietnam and with the United States. And in the meantime, I was, with the help of the university, giving me confidence to be able to do what I could do, I became the co-chair, or well, actually I was the chair of the United States NGOs, all the NGOs, there were over 200 of them, who wanted to work in either Vietnam or Cambodia or Laos. And as that chair, and with my abilities from the University of Maryland professors and my coursework, I was able to negotiate and get Save the Children to be one of the first on the ground programs. They could trust me because I had paid attention, listened, used my skills that I gained from the university. And trust me, any of you alumni out there, you're not going to get much better education than you're going to get at the University of Maryland. It was so helpful for me. I learned so much and I used it. I never, ever forgot. To this day, I'm still using my skills from the University of Maryland. So thank you, University of Maryland.
Well, that's a ringing endorsement. That's great, and I agree. Another question. So any great quotes or mantras or authors that you've been that you think about often or have come up recently that maybe other alumni can read into?
Yeah, well, I love to read, and I love some of the authors who are kind of interfaith. They're not just of one religion or another. They kind of cross over boundaries. Like I love Thomas Merton, who was always looking beyond his own Catholic beliefs. I'm not a Catholic, but I really respect the Catholic belief. But he went off to, Asia to learn Buddhism and to try to see how to apply that. I love Henry Nouwen, who really just enfolded so many different faiths into his writings. And he inspires me so much. Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese man, he compared Jesus and Buddha to each other, and really in a really open way. So there's so many of these authors that are inspirational. They give me inspiration, at least, and they are open. Talk about flexibility. Some of them have had really tough lives and have made incredible use of their lives, and so many successes, and so much have they done. And I would say a couple of my favorite quotes are, Churchill used to say this one, never, never, never give up. And another one, whether this one is Churchill, I believe it is that I love, it's on my refrigerator door. Falling down is part of life. Getting up is living. And of course, my dad always said some of these things to me too. I mean, my mother too. They were just incredible people. And I also am very inspired by something like, many of you may know the 23rd Psalm about walking through the valley of the shadow of death. I will fear no evil. All is well. So that's a couple things, so the Bible is inspirational to me too, and lots of other things.
I agree. So in kind of a similar note, what advice would you give to someone who is in a similar situation, whether it's, health, aging, life changes? What's kind of a secret to living into your life, regardless for what is thrown at you?
Thank you, Cara, for asking that question, because I think about it all the time. When I talk about the word disability, I'm not just talking about someone who's physically disabled. I'm talking about someone who may be mentally disabled, emotionally disabled, maybe can't see well, can't hear well. And I think of people who are working against the battle of ageism and who are prejudiced and discriminated against by their age. I think of people who are people of color, and they are so discriminated against always. And that's a pathetic thing in our country that we still do, and all over the world, actually, for that matter. And we have to learn how to adjust and deal with these things that keep coming up. So advice that I give to anyone who's facing any major ism or problem, whether it's sexism, ageism, racism, whatever, mentalism, um, to really understand as best as possible that we can still live. We are still fully functioning people, even though we may be disabled. So I think you start by accepting the fact that you've got a problem, whatever it is. Cry about it, grieve it, admit your losses, despair. It's okay, just go all the way through all of that. It's okay to do that. And then eventually say, okay, this is my new life. What am I going to do with it? Am I just going to turn it into a despair and a whining? There's nothing worse than someone who's constantly crying and whining about their situation. Oh, woe is me, poor me, poor me. No, no, no. I think we have to learn to accept the fact that sometimes there are some things we can't change. I cannot change the fact that I'm getting older. I have to learn how to live with that. I cannot ever change the fact that I'll probably never walk across the floor without either canes or crutches or a rollator or a walker or getting in a scooter or something. That's just part of my life. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't every now and then get really sad or get angry about it or scream at the world because I just dropped a huge bowl of stuff on the kitchen floor and it broke and it's everywhere and it's very hard for me to pick it up or whatever. Yes, realistically, we will still be angry, we will still hurt. But I think once we say, okay, this is my new life. Now, what am I going to do with this new life? Am I going to just sit in a chair and feel sorry for myself and turn on the boob tube, the TV, and don't do anything? Or am I going to see what can I still do with the skills that I have, with the passion that I have, with the love of life that's still inside of me? There is always in the core of every human being, there is the desire to do something worthwhile. And I think we need to look for it. We need to try to discover, what is it that makes my life worthwhile? What can I do that will help someone else? And I want to say to all of us alumni, there are many people who need us. We're lucky. We had a good university education, a great university, but there are people who don't have an eighth of what we have. So it's important for us to go out and help each other. Now, if you are disabled, as I am, or if you are suffering from getting older, there's still something you can do. You can still be kind, you can be compassionate, you can be loving to someone. There's always something you can do. Don't give in totally to the problem or the disaster or whatever. Now, that's tough to say. And as a woman who suffered a great deal in terms of women, lots of times I was told, you're just a girl, just like I was told when I was a kid. You can't do it because you're just female. Don't take it. That's not true. You are a person of God, whatever your belief is. You are a child of God. You are worthwhile. You have something to give to the world. And I really believe that no matter what is your ism or your problem or your concern or your whatever is going wrong, there is something you have that is unique, that is a special gift that you can give. So look for it. Keep looking. Don't stop looking until you find something that turns you on. I'll never forget my friend in London who was really terribly disabled from, she had MS, and she had been in a wheelchair for a long time. And she kept saying, I get so sick and tired of people who whine and complain. Can't they find anything that they like? Maybe it's butterscotch pudding. I had to laugh at her. Butterscotch pudding? Oh, maybe that'll help, But she would say, all right, get out there, find your passion and do it. So I say that to all of us, especially us Terps. You've got to find it.
Well, I think that actually covers one of my questions, which was what brings you joy and how others can find theirs. I know that when we last spoke, you talked a lot about, kind of moving from New York to Florida and really just finding your home where you landed. So I liked that, and I think it's about putting yourself out there. So is there any advice just to how others can find that joy? Just, I guess.
Yeah, I think, it's some simple things too. If, when you ask me, Cara, what gives me joy? A lot of it is my friends, just plain, sometimes just sitting down, having a cup of coffee with a friend over a good conversation, or just hanging out with them and sitting and staring at a tree. You don't have to be Mother Teresa. You don't have to save the world. There are lots of things that can bring you joy. A great book can take me away into another world. A wonderful movie that I watch on my television now, because I don't go to the movie theaters or whatever. There's just so much. But call someone that you love and tell them that you care about them, and make their life happy too. When someone calls me and says, I've been thinking about you, Joy, I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time and I haven't called and I'm so sorry. I say, oh, I've been thinking about you too. Let's talk. And if we can, let's go on Zoom or FaceTime or WhatsApp or something, and let's see each other. There are ways that we can cut through everything. There is so much that's available to us today. And one of the things that COVID has certainly helped us to figure out is that we don't just have to go to the theater or the opera or the symphony. There's a lot of ways you can still see opera or see plays or see movies or whatever. And you can be safe. Wear your mask, wear your mask. I'm going to say that 100 times, because even though I've been vaccinated twice, when I go somewhere, I wear double mask, because we can still be carriers. We can still be people who can catch the virus even. There are people who have had both vaccinations, and they are. So do everything possible to be careful and protect your neighbors, your friends, your family, and don't take chances. I've lost a lot of friends in New York City that have died from the COVID, and I've lost some here in Florida, and don't take the chance. So be safe, have fun, enjoy your life as much as possible, and find the things that really make you happy. And there's plenty of them out there. So
That's a good wrap up. I think to really wrap things up, I'm going to ask you one last question. What is next for you, for your, all of your plans?
I'm really excited because I've found another one of my passions, and that is, of course, I love to teach and I love to preach, which I did go to seminary after somewhere along the line. I went to seminary because I wanted to integrate my beliefs with my work that I'd learned from the University of Maryland, from Wesleyan, from lots of places, and including Harvard Business School, et cetera. Now, I don't have a master's degree from them, but I took courses from them too. And what I've discovered is that what I want to do now is help people who have some kind of disability. And that could be a racist disability. It could be ageism. It could be mental, physical, emotional. So I'm actually becoming kind of a spokesperson for people who are disabled. And if any of you dear alumni out there who are tuning in and you'd like a speaker or someone who writes things, I am writing about it. I am talking about it. I'm a national speaker. I am preaching about it, and it goes with psychology and education that I received from the University of Maryland, and it goes with life. So find something again, and for me now, I may write more books. I don't know. I've written 9 books. I always forget to count. I wrote a book about cats for children, about a blind cat, and I've actually written 9 books. but it doesn't really matter. And I don't know whether I'll write more books or not, but I'm writing a lot of articles for different magazines and people. But I have become a spokesperson on disabilities. And I'm finding that is really something that is giving me great, there's not a right word to say, but it gives me pleasure and it gives me meaning. It gives me a lot of meaning. And friends, we do need meaning in our life. That's for sure. Find it.
It's great. I mean, on behalf of the University of Maryland, we thank you for your work in everything that you do, and we thank you for sharing your story with us. I think it's an inspiration to alumni. It's definitely an inspiration for me. So thank you so much. Any other parting words or?
Well, I just want to thank you, Cara, and the university for inviting me to come and have this time with you. The university has also published one of my blogs, and they've advertised my latest book. The university has been very good to me. So I want to thank the University of Maryland, not only for a great education that has helped me do a lot of things in my life, still is, and probably will to the day I walk off this universe, which is not for a while yet. Since I've made this 8th year and nobody else has made it past 3, I might make it 20 or 30 years. You never know.
That's right.
But anyway, thank you so much, Cara, and thank you, University of Maryland.
Thank you, Joy, and make sure you go out and find one of Joy's 9 books, the latest one being 9 Lives of Joy. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a wonderful day, stay healthy, and go Terps.